welcome back to the World AI and RPA Show by Trustcon Global. My name is Pavna Bhatia, and right now we're in a conversation on addressing the complexities of scaling AI along with RPA or vice versa for business profitability and upscaling the security. Well, we're looking at talking about what do you recommend as the most critical focus area to investigate before launching new AI scaling pilot programs in terms of security. What are the best strategies for overcoming business bottlenecks to ensure that the data is easily accessible and also remains secure? How are organizations overcoming the legacy infrastructure challenges in the Middle East to implement the best solutions to upscale their security systems, in turn to upscale their business profitability? Well, with this, we're going to be joined by two of our great speakers. Well, also, I'd like to reaffirm that a couple of our speakers have not joined us. That's because of the current COVID situation. So we apologize humbly on that, because we can't really help on that front, but we'd really like to appreciate all the ones who joined us. First up, I'd like to now call upon screen Hariprasad Chede, CISO, National Bank of Fujairah, UAE. Mr. Chede is an information risk and a security professional with more than 19 years of experience. Amongst that, he's spent 15 years in the financial industry, specializing in information risk management, security architecture, and security culture, amongst others. Thank you, Mr. Hariprasad, for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
And we're going to have now Engineer Abdullah Biary, who's the Chief Information Security Officer, United Cooperative Assurance KSA. Well, he's a cybersecurity specialist and a programmer in the Deanship of Information Technology. While at King Abdullah Aziz University, part of his specialized roles include digital forensics, penetration testing, and big IP F5. Thank you so much, Engineer Biary, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bhavana.
So, ladies and gentlemen, with this, you've got your eminent speakers on the screen. And with this, I'd request Engineer Abdullah Biary to moderate this conversation and take it forth. Over to you.
Thank you, Bhavana. Thank you, Trustcon. It's a pleasure to meet you, Harry.
Pleasure, indeed. Pleasure.
All right, so we have the topic is about addressing the complexities of scaling AI along with RPA or vice versa for business profitability and upscaling the security. With the rise of AI and machine learning, in which critical areas do you see the potential benefits of it?
Perfect. Abdullah, before getting into the actual which domains we need to concentrate, let's look into the current threat profile, how what is happening in the world. We all know that actually COVID has accelerated the adoption of digitalization across every industry. And there are a lot of newbies getting into the digitalization. They know how to use the digitalization, but they don't know the perils of the digitalization.
Agreed with you.
Okay, so, and this is a green platform for the adversaries. They are actually increased the technologies, and because of these low-hanging fruits, they are actually starting their own AI and machine learning capabilities to hack the organizations. I will give some examples all the time. This is one of the examples in the external threat perspective. And then, because of the way we started working is changed, because of the remote workforce, because of the different kind of work environments, the internal threat has increased significantly.
Agreed.
Okay, and then the dependency of the third parties we seen in recent attacks, how the dependency of the third parties impacted the whole supply chain. That is also increased significantly. And couple of other threats are that we are seeing the threats are low and slow. They are installing bots in your organizations, and they try to understand what is your day-to-day operations. And they mimic, if you see the number of spear phishing attacks, they mimic exactly how an internal user try to write an email. This doesn't happen without the learning capability what the adversaries are trying to do. Just imagine if this kind of things happens, it is very tough for an individual to detect and respond for this kind of thing. And then, of course, the number of ransomware attacks have increased significantly. We seen the number of products and vendors that say that one we can stop the best of the ransomware, but we seen the number of attacks keep on increasing independent of those solutions implemented in the organizations. And then the last, but not the least, our complexity of the infrastructure has increased very significantly. We talk about integration with the video system, integration with the cloud, integration with a lot of IoT devices, which we don't know. To be frank, many of the organizations don't even know. They may come and say that our system can integrate with the Alexa and you can use a voice command to deliver you a report. Yes, that's good. But do we know what kind of security is happening behind it? So this is a perfect formula for us to go to a place where we need something what traditionally doing the security is not required. We need definitely the tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities we required in order to go forward. What do you feel, Abdullah? Do you feel these are the...
Completely, I agree with you, Harry, and I like how you brought up from the risk point of view of things. It's not all about having the newest features or the newest capabilities or the compatibility to what Alexa or Siri and all of these good benefits. You have to know the risk perspective of it. I also like how you brought up insider threats, as insider threats, I believe, counts up to 70% or 60% of cyber attacks. And how now hackers are using the robots and the AI and machine learning capabilities from their end, not only from our end as trying to secure our environment, they're using it from their end to analyze the behavior of the environment or the infrastructure that they are monitoring through the robot. Right. So that's very, very excellent how you brought it up. So in which areas, if I was to ask you, Harry, in which areas would you see the potential benefits for you if you were to use AI technology or if you're using at the moment AI technology?
Okay.
Is it network level or
I'm using, how would it be? Good. So the first and foremost thing is when I start about AI and machine learning, from security perspective is I will trying to check it out the internal threat perspective, because there are internal threats includes the third parties involved to access my data. I have to depend on the third parties. So I started with the project where I was trying to check it out. There are multiple users trying to access the critical servers and data within the organization. And I want some system to learn the pattern and give a risk score to each of the users. Okay, so it independent by default, I ask them to give a risk score of high and based upon of medium level, sorry, and then based upon their pattern, what kind of critical devices or the critical data they're accessing, give a risk score to that particular pattern and share with me. And that need to be shared in a dashboard so that I will be able to concentrate on those particular assets rather than concentrating anything. If you see any of the organizations, including me, the number of, everybody will be having a vulnerability or the security assessment programs within the organizations. The number of gaps that you have or the number of vulnerabilities that are not able to close because of different complexities involved in the organizations are a lot. Many of the organizations try to concentrate on critical and high and they close it immediately. But excuse me, but what happens to the medium and low? And which one to prioritize that we can go and tell to the people that, guys, please go and concentrate on this. First, get these things solved. If I go with the traditional approach, I always target wherever the critical asset is there, first try to patch those. But what happens to the threat and the exploitability? So this is the first use cases I was trying to use this artificial intelligence and machine learning capability to identify which asset I need to start concentrating, asking my team to implement the patches first. And then also the end users based upon the risk profile, whom I need to do a more user awareness to them on cybersecurity. on cybersecurity, giving an awareness to the all people, and nobody likes it, right? Let's assume that because nowadays people have the different kind of mentality to look into things in different way. Let's assume that everybody have access to Instagram. You hardly spend 10 seconds, that's it, on each video or each page. If you're spending more than that, that means that is really attracting you. Just imagine if that video is of 10 minutes, do you watch?
Yeah.
Definitely not, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, how I need to target specific user awareness that that person is actually doing that kind of risk in the organization.
Yes.
Okay, that is what my use case was when I was trying to give it to them. And I will tell about the strategies, what actually I was able to achieve, what I was not able to achieve, and what are the complexities involved in that.
That's excellent. That's excellent, Harry. If I might catch you up just for a bit. You know, it surprises me how you took the vulnerability assessment and the vulnerability scan and the method that you use. I believe it's a very strategical method. You focused on the people and you gave the people a risk score. And so then it wasn't like the traditional method that everyone, to be honest, about 90% of organizations are going to cut down on the critical. They're going to high. After they get to high, they're going down to medium, and they have a time frame for the vulnerability closings, for the critical, for the medium, for the high, and all that stuff. But the way you said and noted it, and the strategical approach that you use, totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. On the risk profile, on the, say for instance, in an insurance organization, you have the operation team and the sales and finance. These are the three most critical departments. So if I was to focus on the vulnerabilities that's related to these three departments, it might save our business one day, right? If something happens, instead of going through all the traditional methods, or I think this is also where AI shows itself, because it's not something traditional, it's not something that's a legacy system. So if I focus on these three departments, if something, God forbid, happens, then most likely we will recover in a better approach. So that's very interesting. So please continue. I just wanted to thank you for this information.
So the use case came into my mind is I was actually monitoring one of the manufacturing unit in the region. So their biggest expense is health insurance. So what these guys did is they're taking the pattern of the individual people and try to check it out, how many people actually do the regular checkup of their health, and how many people actually going to the critical areas where there is a poisonous gases, or because that industry is like that, where there's a possibility of those gases exposed to them. So they've taken all these patterns and they come to a conclusion by doing a algorithm on it, saying a person who, so they come to that particular algorithm has come to them, invest on these people more insurance rather than the overall all people in the organization, and ensure that one, these people, rather than waiting for the worst thing happen, ensure that when there is a mandatory health check happen for them every month. And they reduced their insurance cost by 80%.
So there's being proactive, you could say.
Yes. Just imagine, because nothing more than safety, we all realized during the pandemic situation, nothing comes before the human side. So I've taken that and that particular life cycle and converted into my use case of the vulnerabilities. That's how the overall strategy has come out. So, and one more thing, what happens is, actually the question when actually the committee come and ask us also, how AI and machine learning impact the cybersecurity. Rather, I say that one, if we start taking cybersecurity as a separate element, the security is never be successful. So one more important element, what I strongly recommend is, it has to be the ownership of the cybersecurity has to go to the every individual in the organization.
Agree.
All right. So Hari, what is the, you can ask me a question saying that, Hari, what is the relationship between responsibility versus AI in machine learning. How I think is this is when you let's assume that you wanted to run a RPA within your organization, robotic process automation. So what is your first strategy? You will start with every processes, or you will, if you start with every processes, and all the experts till now has told that when you will fail. You get down to the grounds. Attention up to the details is the key. The person who is executing the repetition process, go and sit with them, understand the processes, and then try to automate it. Trust me, he knows better risk of that process than a cybersecurity or a CISO sitting on the top. All right. If I enable him to take decisions or to provide the controls at that particular level while designing an RPA for an organization, we are saved a lot. So that's where cybersecurity, we need to ensure that responsibility moves to all the parts of the people. And how you can strategize an RPA in an organization, that is the next question you asked previously. Can I address that, or?
Sure, go ahead, go right ahead.
Okay. Many of the organizations actually start an RPA process because some other organizations are already starting.
So they're following the trend, huh?
They're following the trend. Okay, so you need to be sure about there is nothing wrong in it, to be frank. There is nothing wrong in it. But do you wanted to you wanted to compete with them and win over them? That is what your objective by running an RPA? Then please go ahead. There is nothing wrong in it. Okay, but if your objective is to optimize your processes, then it is completely different. Optimize your process to give a better service to the customer, then it's completely different. It comes into picture. Okay, so having a right strategy is very key. And when we talk about anything with regards to at present, rather, I can say, artificial intelligence and machine learning, we are talking about unknown. Right, in my example of vulnerability management and other things, I don't know whom it can point out. If the system by algorithm points out to my CEO's PC, can I take the same action? I don't know. Right, so we are dealing with the unknown. So you should be adaptive or the agile to go with the flow. So if you don't get the output, don't worry. Please follow the agile methodology of the fail fast and try it again. Or if you want, oh, no, I want a traditional way. I want this output and I wanted to wait till that. And you have to wait continuously. Okay. And then the second point is, though we are talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, too much analysis causes to paralysis. Okay, so if you suspect something, do an action in cybersecurity world. Take an action. Just analyze whether it is impacting your business processes or not, and learn continuously. Rather than waiting for, okay, I saw an abnormality, but I had to analyze. It takes me 10 days. By the time attack might have happened already. Okay. And next is, what is the scope of the adoption that you need to look for? In my case, I'm talking about just prioritizing my vulnerabilities, mapping it to the culture of the organization. Prioritize the scope. What is that scope you wanted to target? I'm sure that when AI machine learning, you and me know that once it is doing so many things in cybersecurity world, starting from stopping the spam emails coming into your organization to the endpoint, right? It is already doing so many things. We don't talk about those things much, actually. Of course, they may not be using the new advanced possibilities or probabilistic ways they're using, but they're using certain kind of behavior analysis kind of stuff.
Yes.
Right? And the last one is, not the last one, in the strategy, we need to worry about the governance. We should not be talking about a bureaucratic approach there. The people should be able to take the decision, and the person who is taking that project has to give that capability to them to take the decisions faster. Because we are talking about dealing with an unknown. Okay. So next is, because as a CISO, one of the, if you wanted to report to the board, first slide will be always ROI, right?
This is what most of, after all the slides, this is what they're main focus on.
Right. So return of.
I think it's, if you don't mind, I think, Harry, this is the main goal of a CISO, to showcase his budget or what he requires as an investment and not an expense. And this way, you could request any type of budget. Most likely, you will get it as long as they see the profitability or the return of investment on your products. So please go back at it.
Yes. So in the return of investments, if you start showing that one, instead of a SOC 10 people, because I'm doing an automation, it will reduce from 10 people to 5 people, you are lost again. It is one of the factor, but you need to show that one, how it is enable the organization capability to reduce your mean time to detect or mean time to respond. You need to start showing different kind of capabilities to the senior management. It is a long-term capabilities that you're trying to show over the time. All right, because some things we can't factor it in a pure quantitative way. It has to be qualitative way. There is something in between 0 and 1. That's how we need to start showing that. And of course, we need to learn the art of making those slides to the senior management as a CISO. So, and the next one, which we are all worried about, is while making them, is lack of talent. We are talking about not only RPA and machine learning talent availability in the market, but we are talking about the cybersecurity people who actually knows RPA and machine learning and try to implement in the organization. How many of these cybersecurity people actually coming from the mathematics world? Okay, that's a bit of a different question to me. And I don't know how many people will give a negative thought of this one, is identifying a right vendor. Every vendor, if it is in the one of the, if any vendor which is in the top quadrant or the one of these things in the any of the analyst reports, that means they reached that by achieving something. But do they understand your culture of the organization? Do they understand what is your expectations? Do they understand what level of expertise you are in? Can they be your partner? If you start looking as a vendor, I don't think so we'll be able to achieve, because most of the things as a end users, we learn from these vendors, to be frank. But then they should be having a different kind of attitude to guide us to the next level. And this is very important.
Hey, that is quite very important. I'm glad that you brought it up. Most people would just see the reports online, which is the #1 company in DLP, which is the #1 company in the same solution. They'll go for their number one. And then even with vendors, I mean, vendors, most of them are reputable and they have a good history and they have good reputation. I'm talking about other vendors. When they see that the guy, he's not really aware of what tool he's bringing in, they'll just bring him a box, they'll set it in his environment, and he will not be fully utilizing it. But he will say, I have this solution, I have this solution, I have this solution. But are these solutions effective? Are these solutions in place in the right places? For instance, you have a next generation firewall. Is it fine-tuned? Are the ports closed? Are all of this stuff implemented? Or is it just a firewall that's sitting in your environment? Are you using that features other than the capabilities of AI or whatever? Right. So I completely agree with you, Harry, and I also like how you brought up third parties and also cloud computing. Third parties is something that cybersecurity or the cybersecurity team should have a very good focus on. Third parties have access to your information. I mean, they're more like hacker that's already inside your environment, and if they would like to damage, or if unintentionally they were to damage, it could happen because they have accesses most of the time to your private information, confidential information. They have accesses to your systems. They most of the time know the workflow. So with all of this, you need to know how to protect it and choosing the right third party to work with. The third party that understands your culture, the third party that's available when you need them. Also the same with cloud computing. Cloud computing, I actually have a little funny story with one of my friends. I was telling him about security, and he has a small organization, and I was telling him, how are you securing your organization? How are you securing your confidential information? I was trying to help him out. He's a friend of mine, right? And he says, don't worry, Abdullah. I was like, what do you mean, don't worry? I have everything on the cloud. So some people think that having their information in the cloud, no, cloud is something that has an infrastructure, it has a team that protects it, so also with that, you have to choose the right cloud partner, you have to choose the right information that you store, and you have to have the right contract with your cloud provider, and a strong SLA in between that. So back to you, Harry.
Okay, and the last component with regards to the overall strategy is, please concentrate on your change management and your culture management in the organizations. When you involve any of this RPAs, because I just observed based upon this first RPA scenario, what I tried to tell where the machine learning is used, my team has come to me saying that, Hari, I'm an expert in vulnerability management and penetration testing. Is it impacting my job? So please try to tell that one where the human is involved. All right. We are talking about automating, which is already repetitive. We don't need a human involvement over there. I'm at that stage and using a artificial intelligence over there, try to take the decisions by itself. All right, because we all worried about lack of resources in security market. And these capabilities of AI and ML will help us in accelerate that. But please keep in mind how the change management and culture management in your organization, you have to manage as a CISO. Okay, these are the various things which comes into picture when you actually strategize for a RPA or the kind of environment in the organization. And the next one which I would like to cover is with respect to the, is it okay, Abdullah, do you have any other queries?
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm just taking the flow. I'm just taking the flow. All right, Hari, now you're talking about the security is done, but what happens if a business comes out with an RPA or a machine learning kind of project into the organization? Being a security person, what you will do, right? Because the business is also talking about unknown, and a security person has to identify a risk in that unknown. Just imagine the complexity, what is involved. So I go back to the traditional threat modeling concept for that particular purpose. You take any of the methodologies, whether it is from the Microsoft or it is from the MIT RE, try to do a threat modeling in your organization for those RPAs. Couple of scenarios, what I can say, my team has come out when I talk about threat modeling, you just come out with your mind, whatever, of course, apart from following the standard methodologies, come out with what scenarios can cause an effect. Literally, when I went attention to the detail, the person who is actually executing, he told me, Hari, any critical application, because that RPA uses a couple of critical applications in the organization. He told me, Hari, for any critical applications in the bank, I use my token to log in. He's shown his token. But when you automate it, how that system can take the token? Are you putting the password over there? Are you storing the password, hard coding the password into that RPA? Right? Because to evade this kind of automations, we use the tokens. I'm sure that many of the new RPAs will be having some innovation methodologies, how to use this second factor. I'm sure that many of the sponsors might be having that kind. So we need to start doing this threat modeling exercise, and it should be continuous. What happens, because we're talking about the bot availability in your organization 24/7. What happens if the bot is compromised? A user is compromised because of the many things. He can tell that when there is an abnormality is happening. Do we have specific arrangements in that systems? Are we collecting the data, or the security technology is collecting the data, identify the abnormal pattern over there? Before talking about abnormal pattern, I rather tell that one, can my security systems understand a normal pattern? What is a normal pattern of a bot? Then we talk about the abnormality. Here, one interesting topic which one of the vendors was trying to say, that I don't want to name the vendor, any vendors here. They talk about everything as immunization. Okay, I like the terminology actually, to be frank. As a humans for the COVID, I'm sure that when our antibodies are generated within the body, a billion years, I don't know how many years the human life is arranged, maybe thousands of years, human life is there, and it has a capability. A small wrong particle or the wrong virus getting into the body, the human antibody starts fighting with automatically. It can recognize this is not my cell in the organization. It is some abnormal person has come, I need to start fighting with it. Right? That instantaneous, the security system has to be built. This is where we need the help of these technologies in security to do it. But when I'm trying to design a security for that, we need to start doing a threat modeling. Do I have any system detecting these kind of abnormalities on the bot? The answer may not be yes or no, but we need to work towards it. And in this threat modeling, when I'm doing it, there are a lot of other concerns that has popped up. What happens if a malware is sitting over there anyway, because bot is learning how the user is doing and repeat it, right? If a bot is actually learning and try to change, okay, there are the two things here. One is, if the data is completely, if it completely corrupts the data, confidentiality will not do. But what happens if it learns the patterns, and if it start changing the data every day, some 10 bytes? Which system will be able to detect that?
Yeah.
So after 1 year, suddenly you found that the customer started, it can collapse the whole systems by itself. The trust of the customer itself, because customer feels that I used to have $100,000 in my account, but how come it is showing only $80,000? And the organizations will not be able to respond because this happened over a time. So what I meant is have a proper threat modeling towards it. And in that scenarios, discuss with your key stakeholders, try to tell them, these are the various risks that we involve, and take the help of the vendors. Also try to check it out, how you can solve these are the various issues that I have it.
Agree with you.
So with this kind of things, I'm sure that this is a future we need to dive forward to it. We need to start learning and improve it.
That's excellent. All right, Harry, I think we're running out of time. So the audience would like to know, for instance, with all the rise of AI, and they're worried about the human factor, do you believe that AI will reduce or eliminate the human factor in organizations?
The answer, I can say it will increase the human value. Rather, if you take the 18th and 19th century, when they started replacing the human carrying something with the animals. And the next, once 19th century, once they start getting the electricity, they invented the electricity and all, then we started depending on the automation of the cars,
Mhm.
and replacing the animals with these things. Like that, this is the fourth industry revolution 4.0, we call it as. Of course, whatever is repetitive will be replaced by a robot. And if I've not seen that one, yesterday, Tesla has announced a human bot. You know that one, right? Human bot with the AI capability of Tesla, it seems. Just imagine what all it can do it. So the human will be doing a more innovative and creative work, and it will elevate the human thinking power. Whichever is a repetitive and low-level decision making, and in fact advanced decision, it will come to the advanced decision making also will be done by these bots. Only thing is we need to ensure that one, the security, privacy, and the risk need to be managed very effectively.
Perfect. Well, I think this wraps up our panel discussion. It was very insightful, and I thank you for all the information that not only the audience benefited from. I find it quite interesting, such as the vulnerability assessment scenario. This is one of the first times I've joined lots of panel discussions, lots of topics when it came to vulnerability assessments. And this is my first time actually hearing it from you, Harry. And it's very quite clever. It's quite strategical, and it's not going by the book. There's ways that CISOs can do or enhance something through bits of knowledge, through being creative, through using right strategy. And then here you showcase that the right strategy which is used when you describe how you went through the vulnerability assessment. So thank you for the time, and thank you, Bhavana, if we could come back to you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Wonderful to have you.
This was my pleasure, dear. Thank you so much, dear.
Thank you, gentlemen. What an incredible conversation that was. It definitely lightened up the entire stage with what all you spoke, because it was very engaging and a lot of great audience feedback coming on the same. So thank you once again.